Welcome, everybody. I'm Craig Butler, Director of Ohio EPA. I just want to welcome you to today's event at Columbiana Schools. Superintendent, Mr. Mook. Where is Mr. Mook? Where is he? Thank you for having us.
Sit up here.
Sit up here. So, School Principal, Mr. Butler. You with us today, sir? I miss it. There you go. Thank you also for having us today. Great to be with you. So, the U.S. enjoys some of the best and safest drinking water in the world. More than 55,000 community public water systems across this country manage a very complex task of treating and delivering water that is safe to drink and provides arguably the safest water ever produced. But we often take this for granted. Having access to safe and reliable drinking water is critical. It's an essential building block of life, and having a safe, abundant supply is critical. However, increasingly we're hearing communities across the country that have high lead levels from samples taken from home faucets. When this happens, communities are then forced to use bottled water or other water sources while problems are being fixed. Not only is it a disruption of daily life, but it erodes the public trust and leaves the public to question whether their water is safe. The Federal Safe Drinking Water Act and the timelines in the allows drinking water systems have to comply with the lead program, in my opinion, in Ohio's opinion, are ridiculously long. And we recognize that we can't wait till 2017 or 2018 for US EPA to update this program as the federal EPA has indicated it will. This is why Ohio has and will continue to act aggressively, become a national leader in putting in place through House Bill 512, which was passed recently to protect public health and drinking water. A few critical items in this bill that was passed. Under House Bill 512, Ohio will now require water systems to provide homeowners with results showing how much lead is in their drinking water within 2 business days. Under the federal system, that is 30 days, and we think it is much too long. Ohio EPA will also intervene to notify a homeowner if the water system fails to do its job, and we have the authority to impose penalties as necessary. If drinking water systems have a system-wide problem with lead, we've also significantly tightened the time frames to notify the general public to also 2 business days, rather than an unbelievable 60 days that is allowed under the federal law to do that. We'll also make low-interest loans available to eligible public water systems to optimize their treatment for lead in drinking water and identify service lines bringing water to homes that also can be replaced with this money. Inexplicably, the federal lead program under the Safe Drinking Water Act does not require any testing to be done at schools. And it's not because we're wanting to be protecting our most at-risk population, which is our children, and this is why we're here today. Since children are the most at-risk population from lead and lead exposure, it's important to find out if older fixtures in older schools contain lead and that are leaching so that they can be replaced. We are at Southside Middle School today because as part of our effort on lead, over $12 million is now available and up to $15,000 per school to help schools built before 1990 identify sources of lead in drinking water and replace outdated lead-based fixtures. We've encouraged all schools and superintendents across this state to take advantage of this money. We're very encouraged that Superintendent Mook and others are ready and stand willing to take advantage of this so that parents, teachers, and schools are at the front of getting lead out of their schools. This money was made available through the Ohio Facilities Commission as well as the Ohio Water Development Authority, and we want to thank for their participation in this as well. And with that, I would like to ask our next speaker, who is Melanie Houston from the Ohio Environmental Council, to please come forward. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Director Butler, and thank you, Southside Middle School, for having us all here today. I'd like to start by saying thank you, Governor Kasich, for your leadership on this bill. Without your prompt and steady leadership, this landmark bill and all it does for Ohio's families and children absolutely could not have happened. My name is Melanie Houston, and I work for the Ohio Environmental Council on issues of environmental health and access to safe drinking water and clean air. At the OEC, we work every day to secure healthy air, land, and water for all who call Ohio home. And this work is critical because our environment isn't just some far-off place where we go hiking. It's something as simple and concrete as the water we drink and the air we breathe. As an environmental advocate and as a policy expert, I believe this bill puts Ohio at the front of the pack in protecting its citizens from lead contamination through our drinking water. And as a mother, nothing matters more to me than the health and safety of my daughter. And no parent should be left wondering whether the water their child is drinking at home or at school is safe. And that's exactly why this bill is so essential. It's increasingly popular these days to criticize the political process as moving too slow, to point to the polarization and the partisan bickering, and to say that the system is broken. But this law shows what can happen when our leaders pull together and rise to the challenge, when they reach across the aisle and focus on what needs to be done. Thanks to the leadership of the governor, Director Butler, Representative Ginter, Senator Schiavone, Ohio is now a national leader in protecting families and communities from the risks of lead exposure through drinking water. Instead of pointing fingers and passing the buck, they worked expediently and deliberately to pass common sense legislation to better protect Ohio's families and children from lead exposure in tap water. This comprehensive law does 4 important things. It gives more attention on properly treating water to prevent a lead problem in the first place. It provides for expedient public notification when there is a lead problem. It gives mechanisms for accountability and enforcement. And finally, provides for better public transparency, including tools for communities and residents to assess their risk. Nobody should worry about the safety of the water they're drinking. And thanks to the governor, the Ohio EPA, and the Ohio legislature, our children, our families, and our communities are now better protected. We look forward to continuing to work closely with the governor, the Ohio EPA, and leaders in the legislature to make sure that every Ohioan has access to safe drinking water, clean air, and a healthy natural environment. Thank you, and next we will hear from Commissioner Halleck.
Good job.
Thank you.
Halleck, boo. Someone said the governor was here. We always welcome Governor Kasich into Columbiana County, and I have a fellow commissioner here, Commissioner Waggle, who's back here today. I think this is your 78th visit in the last 22 years, so we want to welcome you. Don't ask me how I got that number. Dave Johnson gave it to me. As county commissioner here in Columbiana County, I can tell you that there was strong support for the governor's safe drinking water legislation. Our schools in particular are excited to have these new funds to test their water, replace fixtures, and replace drinking fountains where needed. Well, the governor has been pushing hard for economic growth throughout the state, and in particular the Mahoning Valley. He has not left other important areas of focus behind, like quality water. There was a lot of attention this past year and across the nation on lead containment, and I'm really proud of Ohio's leaders, both Democrats and Republicans, who have stepped up to strengthen the communication with citizens where lead may be detected in their drinking water. In my conversations with the Kasich administration, and in particular Director Butler, where'd Craig go?
Over here.
There he is. They laid out a plan to strengthen our state regulations to ensure safe drinking water, and they followed through on their pledge. And Governor, I can tell you, your team, when there was a problem, they reacted quickly, prudently, did the right thing, and instilled a sense of calm. I want to particularly thank my friend, Senator Schiavone. We spoke on the phone several times about this issue, and as I told Joe, there's not a Democrat or Republican glass of water. People really don't care when they turn the spigot on what what their politics is when it comes to safe drinking water. And of course, Representative Ganther, who carried this bill, and he become a star down in Columbus, and we got quite a bit of legislation passed, and we're very proud to be here. With that being said, again, thank you, Director Butler, and Governor, thank you. Now, we're going to hear from Senator Sparrow.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and I appreciate the governor coming to our district. You know, when we had the Sebring issue come out, it was a time where people were scared, where people were frustrated, people were confused, and I'm glad that we were able to pass this legislation in a timely manner. I came up with the bill directly after, and a lot of those provisions in that bill have been incorporated into Representative Ginter's bill, and I'm glad to see that. Now, with that being said, I think we still need to make more investment into making sure that we have testing centers, testing sites for children. We have to make sure that we're investing into water quality systems. And at the end of the day, we have to replace this aged infrastructure, because if you don't have lead pipes, then you won't have lead exposure. And it's a long road, it's a costly road, but it's one that I think that we need to do, not only as a community and as a state, but as a country. And so, with that being said, I'm glad to be a part of this, and I'm glad to be working with all the folks here today. So thank you for having me. Representative Ginter, if you want to come up and say a few words.
Thank you, Senator. And good afternoon, and again, welcome to Governor Kasich and Director Butler to Columbiana County. We're honored to have you here today. You know, occasionally an opportunity comes along to be a part of something that will positively affect the lives of every Ohioan, and such is the case today with HB 512. I want to thank my friends in both the House and the Senate for prioritizing this bill and for voting unanimously in favor of it to ensure that Ohioans are provided with safe drinking water, and if high lead levels are discovered, they're notified as soon as possible, which I think everyone in this room would agree on. It was important to me as the bill's sponsor that this legislation pass, if possible in May or by May, to provide our schools the opportunity during the summer break to test the fixtures and buildings built prior to 1990 for lead in the drinking water. And by the way, the Ohio EPA has been working closely with the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission and the Ohio Water Development Authority to put this new program together. And there is $15,000 per school available for lead testing and replacement of fixtures such as drinking fountains and faucets. There's also funding that is retroactive. Any school that meets the criteria and tested fixtures for lead during 2016 can be reimbursed. But in closing, I want to encourage not only the schools in this district, Columbiana County, but the schools across the state of Ohio to take advantage of the summer to test the fixtures in their older buildings for lead and make use of the $12 million that has been made available to ensure our kids have safe drinking water when they return to school this fall. Again, thank you to my colleagues in the legislature. I appreciate those in the Senate and the House that worked so hard to make this bill what it is today. I appreciate the work of Director Butler and his staff. They were stellar to work with those from the governor's office, and I appreciate the governor's proactive stance on this extremely important issue. And with that, I am now honored to present our governor, John Kasich.
First of all, this is not really a hit on the federal government. Nobody wants to cast blame, but it's kind of amazing to me that when we find out we have a problem in our communities, we take like 30 days or 60 days to let people know. That's not appropriate. So we've got to get into the 2-day, and I think Ohio, well, this puts Ohio in the front. We are the leader in the country now in dealing with this problem. I mean, it's a serious problem. We saw it, of course, in Flint. We saw just a piece of it in Sebring. We have a lot of old infrastructure, and there are ways to deal with it. But, of course, people need to be aware of the danger and be able to act accordingly, which is what we tried to do. There was a little delay here. Our director actually took disciplinary actions against some people that we thought should have been on the ball quicker. But the minute he found out, he called me And people would say, how are you running for president and being governor? I said, well, they have these new inventions now. They're called cell phones. It's really amazing how they work. And so we were on it. He took quick action, which is what you need to do. And then that, of course, led to a whole series of thoughts about what we need to do. One of the things is this Ohio Public Works group now is going to make money available to dealing with the service lines. Those are the lines that go into people's homes. You know, if you have problems in your home, you got to just let that water run whenever you get a notice. The replacing of what happens in a home is going to be more challenging to everyone, but the service lines in are something we can begin to deal with. For the schools, you know, I heard today there was a little bit of concern about, you know, Kasich's in a school, not from this superintendent, but from others, about nobody needs to worry that, you know, they're going to find something that's not good going on in their school, doctor, right? I mean, if you have a problem, just put your hand up. We'll help you. We're all in this together. We want to make sure our kids are healthy, and we want to make sure people in our communities feel as though, you know, they're getting good notification, that they know what the heck is going on, so they can deal appropriately for their family. So we're coming at this in multiple ways: early notification, testing, remediation. I mean, it's why we are now the leader in the country, and I think we'll end up finding probably the federal EPA moving in a direction of where we are. And it won't be the first time we've been a leader. We've been actually a leader on water before, where we were given primary responsibility. The other thing is that the Senator talks, and he's right, I mean, we have to be worried about clean water. We spend $3.6 billion in this state on clean water. Everything from Lake Erie, our precious Lake Erie, to Grand Lake St. Mary's, to all the challenges that we have across the state. Just a word about Lake Erie. You know, many years ago, I smoked cigarettes, and I gave it up, okay, many years ago. I went to the doctor, and I said, "Doctor, how long is it going to take my lungs to clear?" He said, "Oh, not that long, maybe 25 or 30 years." Now, we had abused Lake Erie for decade after decade after decade. We are no longer abusing Lake Erie. But some of the problem that has come about as a result of decades worth of ignoring the real problem, it's cropping up. There's not a reason to panic about it. We passed this legislation, and it was another thing where the Environmental Council helped us, and I'm thrilled to have such an intelligent lady representing them today, a mom and a highly educated graduate of Denison and Ohio State. They worked with us on the issue of putting manure on frozen ground, where, you know, it would run off into the lake, which causes the algae blooms, which causes problems. We were stuck on that. And then I made a couple phone calls saying, well, you know what, there's powers that I have. Executive orders that I have, if you don't get your act together, and voila, we got it done. And it was I think, unanimously passed, endorsed by both parties. I like what Mike Halleck said, once for once. And what I would tell you, Commissioner, God bless you, and I'll light a candle for you. But you know, I like what he said, because look, there's so many issues that are just not Republican or Democrat. And I was talking to Joe about this. You know, one thing I'd like to see happen in our state is, and we're going to have our fundamental disagreements. You got to have. You know, I saw the president was saying that he was upset that he thought the Republican Party was weakened because he thinks the country is better served by a two-party system. I happen to agree with that. And what does a two-party system mean? It means philosophical differences. You know, there are stark differences between Republicans and Democrats on many major issues. And that's fine. That's good. That's good for public debate. It just can't translate into vitriol and hatred and anger. But aside from some of these fundamental views of the economy, which is really critical for us, there are many issues upon which we can agree. And the notion that you happen to be a member of one party and therefore you don't get a big voice is not acceptable. And we have to listen to one another. And I want to see that happen in this state over the remaining time that I'm in public office. So I think we've taken a big step forward here. And we are pro-job, but we're pro-environment. And they are not inconsistent in America. if you just use a little common sense and make some good decisions. Now, we have the superintendent here, who I think was afraid to come in and see me when I arrived, and we have the school board here, and I want to, who else do we have? Principals here. So I want to talk to you about 3 things. Hopefully I'll remember all 3. I don't want to have an oops moment. The first one is start talking. Now, I know that you are a start talking school. Our drug problem across this country is devastating our country, our families, our communities. Now, there's only, and our Start Talking gives you a curriculum for the principals that are here, including the elementary school principal. Let me tell you how I would have a teacher do it. Okay, I would have a teacher walk in. You don't need like a big curriculum. Walk in and say, boys and girls, drugs are really terrible. If you get addicted to them, you could end up in the hospital. People that get addicted to them sometimes die. Don't do drugs. Okay, now pick up your books and let's get to spelling. That's all it takes. It doesn't take some curriculum or some PhD to warn children to stay away from drugs. So in the middle school, I'm a teacher. What do I say? Okay, well, before we get to math today, let me tell you about how serious this drug situation is. Do not take pills. Do not take drugs. If you take them, it can kill you, and it can keep you from being what you want to be. Do you understand, girls and boys? And they can do that like twice a week. You don't need a curriculum. Just don't do drugs. It's a 50% less chance that they will do drugs. Now you're in the high school, okay? Students, before we take our algebra test, I just want to spend a second here talking about drugs. Now, I just want to tell you, I just read a story about a guy that just died of an overdose. You know, don't do drugs because you don't want to die. And you all have hopes and dreams. Don't destroy them by doing something stupid. End of it. That's the end of it. And if we do that across our state, Superintendent, if we do that in every school with every teacher across this state, we will significantly win the battle and we will save lives. And for the life of me, I don't understand why communities don't take it seriously. Because I find that we're not. And if you're in the Lions Club, if you're in the Chamber of Commerce, I don't care what it is, these organizations around our communities need to take this as a priority. So what do? Tell you what I do, to the chagrin of my wife. I walk into a restaurant, I see a couple kids, I say, hey kids, let me tell you something, you stay away from the drugs. I don't know who these kids are. Just take it on before we melt to the ground with overdose death of our best and brightest. Now, that's one thing. School board, please. And I want you, superintendent, you need to talk to all these superintendents. You need to tell, we're talking about saving kids' lives, people's lives. Now, number 2, we have a program called Community Connectors. You go out and you get Bob Seebo's a businessman, okay? You get Seebo here, or you get Dave Johnson, and he works with a value-based, faith-based church, synagogue, it doesn't matter, have a partner, and they adopt your school. We will give you $3 for every dollar that is invested. You're not going to run the program, they're going to run the program, but you need to work with them. And what do? We train the mentors. And the mentors go into the school and they sit in the classroom and they come in and they tell kids, you know what you can be? Do you know what it would be? Now Bob Seebo here, I don't know if you know this, he goes into some of these schools and he yanks these kids out who are failing and could drop out, and he takes them in his big fancy $500,000 car. He gives them a ride, their mouths are hanging open. And then he takes them to the old house where he used to live. And you could take 10 of those houses to fit into his new house. You ever take them to the new house? You need to do that. Take them to the old to the new. I'm going to get you to be a salesman. But what he's doing is he's changing lives. He's changing lives because he's grabbing kids and encouraging them. Now, we have a tendency to think that the only kids that need encouragement are those who are downtrodden and poor. But I want to tell you that every kid needs it. Every kid needs to hear about what their potential is. We, of course, don't want to ignore the downtrodden because we don't want them to drop out and we want them to talk about their glorious future. But we also want to talk to kids at the top who might someday have a discovery and cure cancer. I don't know. This program is available to you, and frankly, in Columbiana County, it's being used here, but it's like free money for a while. And then, once you get it for the first year, we expect you to raise it yourself and fund it yourself. You don't have to fund that much. Just get in the schools and help people. What we know is in the Cincinnati schools, they have a collaborative down there. Their graduation rate, I believe, is 63%, and where they mentor kids 1 hour a week for a year, the graduation rate is 97%. It works. So why don't we do that? And then why don't you spread the word, if you would, Doctor, to all the different friends you have in this, because the schools are important. And I know the schools have got a zillion things they're trying to do. But I think these two things are really important. Finally, on the way up here, sometimes I think education gets in the way of learning. Let me repeat that. Education gets in the way of learning. We are undergoing massive structural changes in our economy. And it's even going to occur faster. You talk to people who, look, I know the guy that created the autonomous car for Google. I know the guy that created the Google glasses. I know the guy working on the flying car, okay? There is going to be significant changes in our workforce because of artificial intelligence, because of the development of the autonomous car, and that's just the beginning. Now, we have a workforce that at times is not flexible enough to know how to, one, have resilience, number two, know how to adapt to a new environment, and when that doesn't happen, then people find themselves out of work, they find themselves in poverty, and then what happens? Nothing good, including a problem of substance abuse when they lose hope. I was just reading today on the way up here on the airplane. I never get to read enough. But these Catholic schools, they started in Cincinnati. What's it called? Cristo Rey. Cristo Rey. They have a program that says that if you come to Cristo Rey, we will give you 5 days a month to work in a professional occupation. 5 days a month. Now my daughters, when I'm running for president, sometimes they had to travel with me. And I'd call the principal. He always loved it when I called him. But I called the principal. And I said, no, you know, the girls are going to miss some school. He said, well, let me tell you, John, we can never let education get in the way of learning. We are too held back by rules and regulations and structures, and I am willing to partner with anybody that wants to come up with a unique program to put flexibility into the school system. See, I'm really pretty well convinced that we are still running schools like we did 100 years ago. Now you tell me what works well that worked 100 years ago. You know, maybe something you drink, but that's about it. Because here in this century, everything is changing at the speed of light. And education and government has to change at the speed of light, or we're going to lose a chunk of our population to frustration, poverty, and unemployment. Because the change is not going away. But we can retrain people for the jobs of today and the jobs of tomorrow if we can give our people the tools to understand flexibility, resilience, and how to get yourself a better life tomorrow based on the change that's happening in our society. So I'm willing to work with you, Superintendent, on any imaginative or creative program that you can come up with. We'll work with the union. And I know we're in Columbiana County, but I cannot tell you how thrilled I am of what's happening in the Valley and most particularly in Youngstown. With Jim Tressel at Youngstown State, we're building a better, stronger board, and I am absolutely thrilled about what's happening in the Youngstown City Schools. We now have brought someone in to run those schools who has incredible experience in turning schools around in the inner city of Chicago, it's great. But you're ahead of that game. Let's think about change, innovation, creativity. It's up to you and this school board. And I know you got all these rules and all these, just tell us what you want to do. Tell us what you want to do and we're all ears. And so, a lot of subjects to cover today, but I didn't want to come all the way here and not preach for at least a little while. So we'll sign this bill, and then I guess we'll take a few questions, and then we'll, I'm leaving. I'm going to Pittsburgh tonight, interestingly enough. So let's get about it, okay?
Questions pertaining to today's
Hey,
event.
who's never, now you come
We do
on
have
up here.
availability
I'm not
after,
inviting
so we're
you. Are you the youngest person in this room? Are you?
Yeah.
Okay. What is your name? Lexi. Lexi? Pretty name. Well, you want to come up here and help me with this bill signing? Okay. So, here, you just stand right beside me here. Okay. And I'm going to show you what I need. Okay. That's the mayor. Okay, now, what do we normally have to do when we have an aye? What do we normally have to do? Okay, so if it doesn't look like we spotted, think you can fix that? You got it. Excellent job. Okay, so we now have law, okay? Thank you. A bunch of pens, and I don't know who's going to get them, because I don't make those decisions.